Hi, welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to carry on with our toms for our Slice Beatbox kit. We're going to look at mapping some of the key parameters on the simpler instrument for each of our toms to the macros here within that nested drum rack that's only for the toms. And we're also going to have a look at maybe adding a grain delay to our drum kit and maybe map a couple of the parameters of that to these global macros here. Maybe we'll add one or two other parameters as well, just to give us some global control. And I'm going to use a UC33 controller, because that's the controller I use most of all, and use Live's auto mapping feature to just play about with some of these parameters in real time, just to give it some real creative control and allow some real hands-on sculpting of the sound and to show it in a kind of performance context. So basically, I'm going to map the volume attack and decay to these two macros here, and then I'm going to go for filter frequency, filter resonance, filter decay, pitch, pitch envelope, and volume. I think they're some pretty good parameters to map that'll give us a lot of flexibility and variation in control over the sound. So let's just start off right away. Unfortunately, like we saw in the last tutorial, we have this copy value to siblings function here. There's not an equivalent for mapping to macros, so we're going to have to go through and do this one by one for each of these toms, which is a little bit tedious, but we'll live. Okay, so let's start with the attack, map that to macro 1, and we'll just rename that. And do the same for the mid tom. Map to attack. You see it now says in the menu map to attack. Macro 2 will go for the decay there. So I'm just right clicking on these knobs, or hold control and click if you've only got a one button mouse. Macro 2, and do the same for the high tom. Now you'll have noticed that as I've been doing this, it's resetting the decay to the minimum setting here. And that's because it's taking on whatever setting the macro is already at, which is really quite an irritating feature or maybe bug of Live. I'm not really sure why it doesn't work the other way around and the macro just takes on the value of the parameter as it already is, because it is a bit irritating if you've already set all your parameters up the way you want them and then you want to map them to a macro and you find it changes, but I guess it has to reset to 0. So we'll live with that anyway, because we're going to actually manipulate these in real time on a controller or by using these macros. So we're going to be changing them a lot, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So anyway, we'll rename that decay. And we'll do that. We've done that for all of them. So the macro 3 will go filter frequency. Same for mid tom, low tom. Rename that. In fact, I might just go through and name all these in one go, so that, just to make it that little bit easier to map. Filter decay. Pitch envelope. And volume. Okay, so filter resonance. Mid tom. High tom. Filter decay. Now, this is something to watch out for. You can see here, switching between these tabs, there's only a very subtle visual clue to let you know which tab you're on. And as we switch between the toms, say for example the volume selected on this one, and then the filter's selected on this one. You kind of really have to be on the ball to notice that straight away. So that's something to really watch out for. You can easily start messing about with the parameters and wonder why it's not doing anything, and then discover you're actually in the wrong tab. So we want to make sure we're on the filter tab, and we'll map that filter decay to filter decay there. Same for the mid tom, filter tab, low tom, filter tab. See, I could have very easily gone for the volume decay then. And we'll go for pitch. So for this one, we're going to use the transpose setting here. Now, we have to, just before we do this, pay attention to what settings they're all on. So that's 5, 9, and 11. Okay, now let's just trigger that. Oh, okay, we can't hear it because they've all reset to 0, including the decay, so there's nothing to play at the moment. So we'll check that out in a second. I think, just for the sake of consistency, we might keep them 4 semitones apart, but we'll have a look at that in a moment. Let's just map these to pitch. Now you'll see all of them got reset to -48 because they're all being reset to 0 here. And that means they've all got the same settings now. And of course we don't want that. We want them all to be that 4 semitones or whatever apart. So if we go into map mode here by pressing this button here, and we need to open that browser if it's not already opened, we can see here macro 6 pitch has got all the settings, the minimum and maximum settings here. So it says here high tom, mid tom, low tom. So the way to do that, and we'll just make it 4 semitones for now, even though the mid and low were -9 and -11. For the moment, let's just make it an even 4 between all of them. So for the high tom, that's going to be the highest of them. So we'll leave the maximum setting at +48. But the minimum setting, let's make it -40. Because that's subtracting 2 lots of 4 semitones from it. And for the mid transpose, we'll go -44 to +44, and that keeps it at either end 4 semitones less than the maximum or more than the minimum. And for the low tom, we'll set the maximum to +40. So now that will keep 4 semitones in between each of the toms. And you can see here, if we turn that knob now, I think we have to put it up to around 51 for the high tom to be at -5 where it was. Now if we click the mid tom, you can see it's -9 again. And now -13 for the low tom. So that's basically right. That's what we wanted. There's the right interval in between them now. Now, of course, going all the way up to +48 semitones or -48 might be a bit extreme really for a pitch control on the toms. You might not ever find a situation where you want to go that far. So of course we could easily go into map mode and change that and just make the maximum a lot less or the minimum a lot more. So, but for now we'll leave it at that. We're going to have a bit of a play once we get all these mapped and see how we like the sound. So let's get on and map the pitch envelope. This one here. To pitch envelope, mid tom, high tom, and finally the volume. The volume, mid tom, low tom. Now again, you'll notice that goes all the way down to -36. Let's just check what the maximum's doing here. That maximum is +36 as well, which is very loud really. We probably don't actually want them to go above 0. So let's just set all of these to 0 for the moment. Otherwise you might blow your speakers. Okay, so we'll leave it at -36. That doesn't really matter. That gives us quite a lot of control over how much we turn the volume up or down. But really you could set that to -12 and have far less control on the knob so that the knob has a much more subtle effect. It's going to have quite an extreme effect at the moment. But we'll leave it for now and we'll see how it goes. We can always come back, press this map mode button again later and change it. So, there we go. They're all mapped. And so let's just trigger this clip. And we can't really hear anything because the decay is all the way down. And so is the filter decay. And the volume is all the way down. Now that sounds like one isn't mapped properly. Now if you'll notice here, this decay setting is for some reason mapped to a different setting than everything else. So let's just check that here, map mode. I'm not entirely sure why that's happened. It's not even listed here. So we must have missed that one. Map to filter decay. That must have been mapped to the wrong setting. I think that might have been an example of what I was talking about before, where you can easily think you're on the wrong tab. So let's just try that again. That sounds a bit more even now. But maybe I'll just turn the delay off for the moment, so we can hear what's going on, or down a bit. And like I said, I've got my UC33 here, so I might just play around with that. I might turn the delay back up again now. Now what might be a good thing, I think probably when you're playing about with the toms, you might want to actually turn the delay and maybe the reverb up a bit. So maybe for now we'll just map these to a couple of the macros. Go with the first ones for now, or no, we'll keep them on the second ones because we might want something more obvious like the kick on the first ones. So if we just map send C to macro 5, we'll call that tom space reverb, put the space in so it goes on to the next line, and macro 6 will go tom delay. So now, if I just select this rack here, I can use the auto mapping to turn the effects up or down. And then if I just want to move back onto changing the actual tom sounds, just select that rack. Now that's sounding pretty cool. I might just stick a, I might just duplicate this clip here. Control D, Command D on Mac. And I'll stick a kick drum in just to put it into context a bit more. Now I want to turn that delay down, so I just select the main rack. That's using our auto mapping. Now I might try a grain delay, because I think a grain delay goes really well with the toms. Go to Audio Effects, Grain Delay. We'll just drag one of these presets in, maybe just Rubber Band, doesn't matter really. I'll set that to sync and maybe stick it on 3 here. Let's just try this. I'm going to turn the pitch down a little bit. And I might turn the feedback down a bit as well. Let's spray off. There we go, that's quite nice. Because it's changing the pitch, so it's giving it a nice kind of delay, but the pitch is changing as well. So I might stick that grain delay on one of the macros here as well. So if I stick the actual send to maybe macro 8, and we'll just call that Tom G delay. And so now we can see the blue hands on, so that's selected. Now what I might do is just actually try the grain delay's pitch parameter here. And I'll map that to macro 7. Let's just rename that first. Call it G delay pitch. But that's a bit too extreme. So let's just stop that. Let's go into map mode again. Now that's a bit too extreme. I actually only want it to go to maybe plus 1 or 2 really, and then minus about 3, somewhere like that. Have a fairly subtle effect in the sound. I might change that later, but for now let's try that. Might try a little bit more. Maybe I'll go plus and minus 6. Just gives us a little bit more leeway, but not too extreme. You can see once it gets down low there, because it's a fairly low sound to begin with, it's making it sound a bit too low. So you can hear we can have quite a lot of control over this, and in a performance context this is going to give you a lot of options. It's got a volume control there, and you hear once you just start messing about with the pitch envelope, if you just keep it around the middle there, it's almost like having a synthesizer really. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's a drum synth, or a tom synth, if you like, but we've created it ourselves using these very short loops of these samples here. And there we go. You can see just how powerful that is, and all we've done is really not that much when you break it all down into the simple steps. We've actually done some very simple things. We're just looking at using the simplers as though they're synthesizers. And just by playing with the filters, the loop settings, the envelopes, the transpose settings, you can do quite a lot. And then by mapping some of these functions to the macros, you then have a lot of real-time control over that. So you can make it sound drastically different just by turning a knob. So that's basically a lot to play around with there, and a lot of fun can be had there. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.